Hi, everybody, and welcome to our Monday market review, where we go through all of the currency charts that we trade, the top 28 pairs, and have a look, as well as a couple of indices and a few commodities, just to, first of all, do a short debrief of last week's trades and the conditions that prevailed, as well as have a look at our current view for the week ahead. Well, before I start on the currency pairs, just a quick observation that last week, I'd say the general theme, of course, was US dollar strength, and also accompanied with both the GBP and New Zealand dollar weakness. And that really presented most of our trading opportunities through the course of last week. So let's have a look at the charts, starting as always with the Euro USD on the weekly time frame, where we could see that last week we had a nice bearish impulse candle on this time frame, dropping down to daily, of course. That led to finally a breakout of our long-standing support level that we've been looking at for a good month or so. Not only that, but we had a setup, which we might have discussed last week, for a short on the daily time frame, which we did take. And although it messed around for a while, it ultimately did go on to hit its take profit on Thursday. So pretty happy with that. And of course, that bearish move also provided the appropriate conditions for us to trade our lower time frame strategies, both a hybrid and an H4 impulse going on to hit their take profit. So happy with that. It certainly didn't give us the highest reward to risk ratio, certainly on our H4 impulse, just under 2-to-1, if I think I remember correctly. But yeah, that was it for the week on this currency pair. On the cable itself, as I mentioned, although we did see some weakness on the cable, it didn't really do much for us here. You can see again on the weekly, though, it has given us that outside close for the first time in quite some time. So far today, and of course it is very early in the week, we're seeing a retracement pretty much across the board. And it looks like this on daily. We saw, in fact, Thursday and Friday, we had that low ring after Friday's close, which basically set us up for this bullish retracement, coming back up now to this resistance level that we previously broke through. So looking to see what price does around this level. And of course, if we do get the market rolling over, that's going to set us up for some daily entries. We haven't seen daily impulse entries on the cable for quite some time. Yeah, that would certainly be the first. Now, I don't think it's going to happen today, but let's have a look at tomorrow. Certainly, if tomorrow we get a lower close on tomorrow's candle, we'd be looking to short this market for that particular strategy. And then, of course, that would also set us up to look at the lower time frames as well. So keep an eye open on that one. Dollar yen on weekly, as you can see, we had a very strong test of that resistance level, which looks like this on the daily, being a significant breakout. As we know, on the 24th, we discussed this last week, and that gave us multiple trading opportunities through the course of last week. Unfortunately, this ended up pretty much breaking even overall. We had 2 H4 impulses followed, in fact, 3, I beg your pardon, followed by 2 overlays. And overall, I think we made a little bit on the currency pair, but given that the strength of that initial movement, it wasn't as much as we were hoping for. Now, certainly on the rest of the US dollar term pairs, I don't think there was very much at all. We did previously have a setup. Let me just pop to weekly first, as we normally do. As you can see, we're deep inside the channel on weekly, and we don't have any valid WM, class 1 WM patterns. So nothing really much for us to look at there. But of course, we do know that once we got outside of our 4-wave channel, and this was in fact the top of the 4-wave channel, up until the middle of last week. So before that, once we had that outside close, for those of you who are pure channel traders, because this does not qualify as a class 1 W pattern either. But if you're a pure channel trader, once we got that outside close, then certainly there was a potential lower time frame setup. We had both a hybrid and a H4 impulse. The hybrid didn't go as far as we would generally have liked something like that to go, but in any case, it still ended up being nice and profitable, and we solidly hit our target on that H4 impulse. Okay, so USD Cad on weekly, as you can see, nothing much. In fact, even last week's candle just being a high test with the close very close to the week's open, And here you can see on daily, deep inside the channel, nothing doing for us. Aussie and Kiwi we've been talking about for a while now. As you can see, last week's candle again, not showing us much at all, and just maybe being a little bit bigger than that preceding week's doji, but still. Okay, the one thing we can say about it is that it is outside of our 4-wave channel here, but it's not really going anywhere. And here on daily, as you can see, we did have a brief breakout through the course of last week. That gave us a couple of setups as well. Again, we had a class 2 setup for a hybrid and our H4 impulse. The hybrid gave us a small win. The H4 impulse gave us a small loser. It didn't really go anywhere in the end, which was a bit of a pity. And it was almost exactly the same picture for the Kiwi. Now, of course, Kiwi is still inside of the channel here on the weekly, but using daily as our selection time frame for trading on the H4, we had that breakout to the 4-wave channel. It was also a valid M pattern. I think Aussie was as well. So that allowed us to drop down to H4 and take advantage of that. So at least we got the one winner. The first trade being a class 2 setup for H4 impulse, if I remember correctly here on the H4 time frame. It was followed immediately by another setup which got stopped out for a tiny loss. So nothing much going on there. We didn't get an overlay, unfortunately, with this very messy retracement behavior. By the time we would have got an overlay, we were already too deep into that retracement. So didn't get anything there. Might have been a good trade for one of our counter trend strategies, but we're not really looking at that here for these purposes. Right, so moving to our yen crosses, euro yen. Again, first we had the market coming back down through the course of last week to the support level. It looks like we may well have that high ring, but we need to wait until the end of the week to see if that is the case. But certainly the low was ringed, proving that that support level remains solidly intact. Here on daily, through the course of last week, you can see we stayed very much inside of that channel, so there wasn't anything for us to do there on the lower time frames at all. Same thing effectively for the Gbp Jpy, the twisted sister, as it's known. Both of our selection time frames deep inside the channel and no valid patterns either. Swiss yen, we on weekly discussed before that we did have this breakout, which means that technically we are still in a trend, but a week before last, having this candle, bullish impulse and engulfing candle coming back inside of the channel, showing significant bearish weakness. So technically, yes, we are still in this bearish trend. Cyclicity has not yet broken down, but it's not something we're willing to trade with that weakness there. So that's what it looks like on the daily. We already know from last week that we had this deep V pattern with that retracement coming straight back up to the course of last week to that preceding fractal high, respecting that resistance level, and then having come back down on Friday. And again, now during the course of today, it looks like we are having the bottom of our 4-wave channel still solidly supported after that temporary breakout. So if that is the case, then if this low gets ringed, we can say without a shadow of a doubt that there is no bearish trend there at all. So as you can see on the yen crosses, not much happening at all. CAD yen deep inside the channel here as well on weekly. We did have an attempted breakout. The prisoners tried to escape, but you can see that ultimately through the course of last week, this resistance level was solidly respected. Now let's see what happens today. High ring there. If this low gets ringed, it will be a valid W pattern, folks. Plus, if you're a channel trader, you'd be looking to trade this potentially tomorrow if we were to get a close that looked anything like this at the end of today. So do keep an eye on that for tomorrow's trading. Aussie yen, and I'd say Kiwi yen as well. Not really anything for us to look at through the course of last week, and at the moment, nothing either. We don't have any valid WM patterns or class 1 patterns either there. So Kiwi yen, even more so. As you can see, deep inside the channel, we do not have any directional bias showing itself there at all. Right, so that's the yen crosses. Let's have a look at our euro crosses. Euro GBP, really nothing to write home about at all. That high test, bearish high test as well, here on the weekly time frame, deep inside of that channel. And that's what it looks like on daily with that very temporary breakout. which we did get as a result of that breakout. And what was that? That was Tuesday, the 28th. So from Wednesday, we were able to have a look for an H4 impulse. Gave us a perfect setup. Didn't get anywhere. Ended up getting stopped out on that trailing stop for about 2/3 of the original risk. But we got a perfect overlay here just to compensate for that. In fact, more than compensate for that. So we walked away from the week on this pair with a small profit thanks to that overlay. Euro Swiss, nothing doing for us here. I mean, last week was a bearish impulse candle, as you can see, and it did give us that breakout on daily. I don't think we've seen anything, and that was Thursday. Certainly running into Friday, we didn't get anything that was worth looking at. And today it looks like we're into a retracement on this. So I haven't seen anything in the software popping up for these at all. The one that did pop up, of course, today was the Eurocad, where we have on, well, let's just go and have a look at the weekly first, just to show you that we are actually still inside of the channel here on a weekly, and there's no valid pattern. But last week, we had another bearish impulse candle following on the previous week's bearish engulfing impulse candle. And that on daily led to a breakout of our 4-wave channel. Now, the first actual trade that we got, as you can see, was taken this morning. So for whatever reason that might be, clearly wasn't a valid setup here. And we only go for class 2 and class 1 and class 2 setups on H4 impulse. So if you are not as strict as that, if you're also looking for class 3, then you may well have had a nice entry here. And that certainly would have worked out. So good for you if you did. But since then, as I say, this has been the next one. Took it this morning. It's not really doing much of anything at the moment, as you can see. Excuse me. But we'll just wait and see what happens. The fact of the matter is, we are still very much in a bearish phase 1 of a bearish trend here, both in terms of channel breakout as well as a class 1 M pattern here on the selection time frame. Across all of our pairs, that's actually the only trade we've got running at the moment, but it's still very early in the week. There is lots of potential, as you can see. Right, trying to get through to our next instrument. There we go. Euro Aussie on the weekly, another bearish impulse candle over here. There's that Aussie strength actually against the Euro's weakness showing itself. So popping down to daily, though, you can see that we are in the channel and there's nothing for us to look at there. And really, it's the same picture here on the Euro NZD, both on the weekly and daily time frame. So there was a potential for a valid class 1 W pattern here, with daily being selection time frame. Didn't work out. Friday closed back inside of that potential XA price territory, or the future XA price territory. Right, moving on to our GBP crosses. Gbp Swiss, just really just a spinning top inside of the channel. Nothing to write home about on that time frame. We did get a temporary breakout there. So it is true that also, if this carries on the way it is at the moment, with this bullish engulfing candle, followed by another slightly higher high in the early part of today, means that that low is effectively ringed. Back inside of the channel, no valid pattern, and we didn't get any setups for that either. So a very temporary breakout. But remember, it is still technically a trend. Gbp Cad, another pair where we've got 2 bearish impulse candles in a row. So that looking very much like a breakout here on the daily time frame. So there was certainly potential. There were definitely trades here last week. Not much of it worked out. And again, it depends on how strict you are with your selection criteria. So we had a losing overlay on this one earlier. Actually, I think we spoke about that before. That was the preceding week. And if you are not worried, in fact, this was a class 2 setup. I'm not sure why it's not showing here with my analysis. It was a valid class 2 setup here. Let me just quickly pull that in. That is an undeniable setup for an H4 impulse to short that. So let's just put that in there. I'm just showing, assuming that our ATR target would have been the same. Yeah, that's right. So GBP Cad here, giving anyone who is trading the H4 impulse a clear short on that and hitting take profit. But then the next one did not work out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I haven't actually updated any of this by the looks of things. I need to talk to the folks. That would have stopped out there. So using our 3-6 trading stop rule, we would have been stopped out for a well, significantly less than the original risk, but still. We would have walked away with tidy profits on this currency pair for the week. Again, we have not yet had a setup for an overlay, but in fact, this candle, as it stands right now, looks like it's stacking up for exactly that. So we may well be getting a bullish overlay on this in 2 hours time. So keeping an eye on that. That's obviously by the time you watch this though, that time will have passed. Okay, so GBP Aussie, here's daily. Let's just confirm again that on weekly, there's nothing really of interest for us. And likewise here on daily, no valid patterns. We haven't really been interested in this for a while. Same thing goes for GBP NZD. In fact, that's probably one of the, if that is the worst of the currency pairs that we're looking at across all of those that we do look at. Okay, yeah, CAD Swiss, bullish impulse candle. The Canadian dollar also mirroring that US dollar strength through the course of last week. But was there anything for us? And the answer is no. Also respected that. We did get that marginal breakout there on Thursday. Following on Friday, we didn't actually get any trades on it though. So obviously no valid setups. So looking at this, however, bear in mind that we also now and again do like to look at the quality of the wave. So we would like to see today's candle giving us an impulse candle for this to be worth trading, seeing as that would be the second candle in this potential impulse wave. If we don't get any kind of quality there, why would we want to trade it? Okay, Aussie Swiss, moving into these other crosses with the Aussie. Similar picture across many of our Aussie pairs, of course, inside the channel. And this one, as we know, did have that trend breakdown. And through the course of last week, daily just going very much sideways. Aussie Cad, a different kettle of fish altogether. Just quickly looking at weekly, nothing really to observe here, but it is noteworthy that the preceding week we had that bearish impulse candle. In any case, through the course of the latter part of the previous week, we spoke about the trades. I think we spoke about this trade that we got there. Now, that followed, we followed up with that last week with a couple of interesting trades, all overlays. We had 3 overlays in a row. First one was a loser, but then we had 2 winners immediately after that. So quite interesting. It doesn't happen very often where you get 3 overlays in a row on one pair, but that really is simply because we kept getting a new lower low being formed and a new bearish impulse wave each time. So every time that happened, there was the potential for especially when we saw the breakdown in that cyclicity, there was the potential for an overlay. We had it here initially with this low failing to close below that low, and we had it again here. It was marginal, but that was a higher high. That actually led to the first winner, and then we had another higher low over here, giving us a second setup for an overlay, also going straight to take profit. So glad to see that strategy is doing its job. Certainly made up for a couple of losers elsewhere. Aussie Kiwi on weekly here, you can see that New Zealand dollar weakness that I mentioned earlier against its local counterpart down that part of the world, where it's a very strong bullish impulse candle here on the weekly time frame, giving us a confirmation that this preceding low is ringed, meaning that we are definitely into a retracement wave of this bearish trend. And it looks like this here on the daily time frame, where on Thursday we did finally get a breakout. Didn't really go anywhere. I'm not sure that there were any setups. Again, it depends on what you look for. If you're looking for class 1 and class 2 setups only, I'm not sure that there would have been one here for you. But even if you did get one, it would have been stopped out. So that's that one. And then, of course, one thing that we should be noting here is that, in fact, there was a setup to short this with an overlay. I'm just looking at that first thing this morning. So we should be in a bearish overlay on this already. So maybe on your accounts, you guys who are trading the overlay, you are already doing that. So if you had a bullish loser on H4 impulse here in the latter part of last week, then as you can see, the overlay should be helping you to recoup some of that. All right, Kiwi Swiss, nothing of any use to us on the weekly. When dropping down to daily, you can see that likewise, we have nothing to work with at the moment. So what we did notice in our mentoring call on the weekend was that there was potential for this to be a valid class 1 M pattern, but that does require an outside close here, and I don't think that's happened or going to happen. So that really disqualifies that in terms of pattern trading. But on Kiwi Cad, first of all, just looking at this on weekly, again, that Canadian dollar, I think just about every single Canadian dollar pair has had 2 bearish impulse candles in a row on the weekly time frame, showing that strength mirroring the US dollar. So much as we can't use that for a selection time frame, we are keeping our eye on the daily time frame as a selection time frame. So looking like we're getting a retracement now. Very likely that we're going to get a valid M pattern at some point during the week ahead. It's not guaranteed, of course. All right, and that's all of our currency pairs. Just a quick look at gold, which did very little last week. No real interest to us. There was a bearish breakout, though, Tuesday, I think it was, but it didn't last very long. And I think everybody knows what's happening on the stock markets. Weekly time frame still overall looking bearish here, and as you can see, we had pretty much a significant dead cat bounce through the last week, but then Friday, strong retracements in the stock markets, very volatile conditions across the board, and same goes for what I prefer to use as a bellwether, both the S&P 500. What's interesting is that the NASDAQ not responding nearly as much as the others. In fact, we've had a bearish breakout of the channel here, and it has stayed solidly out of the channel despite Friday's relatively small bullish low test candle. So interesting that, remember that there is an asymmetry on the stock markets, unlike currency pairs. So remember that in your strategy rules. Right, folks, well, that's pretty much it from me. If you are enjoying the material here, please make sure that you subscribe to our channel. If you like the video and if you've got value out of today's session, I'd really appreciate it. If you'd hit that like button, and also if you do have any questions, you're welcome to drop them into the comments below, and I will answer each one personally. So, folks, have an absolutely super week ahead trading. Looks like there's not a very busy market at the moment, but there's definitely potential. But remember, the #1 job of a trader is to keep your powder dry, make sure you manage your risk effectively, limit your downside, and grab those nice big upside winners. Folks, I'll chat to you later in the week for some more trading. See you then. Bye for now.